in the House, our House. Madam Speaker, my former seatmate in the House chamber. Why don't you come up? We're going to take up House Bill 1287, Madam Speaker. And you take the time you need. And Marty, you're going to be here for questions, or okay, sounds good. It's all yours on House Bill 1287.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the Senate Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. I get one of the longest titles. For the record, I'm Speaker Adrian Jones. I'm here today to testify in support of House Bill 1287, legislation to provide our school leaders with stronger school leadership training. I don't think I need to remind anyone on this committee that our school systems are awash with challenges right now. At the end of the day, it is our superintendents, school boards, and school principals who are responsible for executing the education of thousands of our children. They're responsible for overseeing thousands of teachers, administrators, counselors, coaches, librarians, and bus drivers. They're responsible for monitoring our student success, for setting a vision for their school system, and keeping all of their students and employees safe. Their leadership cannot be taken for granted. We know that good leadership takes practice. It takes commitment and it takes training. When it comes to those leading our schools and directing the education of our children, we want good leaders who want to get better. That's why part of the blueprint legislation directed MSDE to establish a school leadership training program for student superintendents, Board of Education members, and other school leaders. This program also requires training specifically on the implementation of the blueprint for Maryland's future. All that House Bill 1287 seeks to do is require that our school leaders actually attend and participate in this school leadership training program. The bill also requires the training program to include a review of how to better attract, hire, and retain teachers from diverse backgrounds, an issue that we as a state need to focus more attention on. I know that we all have heard from our superintendents on the challenges that they have faced in implementing some aspects of the blueprint. It is my hope that this bill will provide them with another tool as they lead the way in enacting the goals and requirements of the blueprint. As a former member of the Kerwin Commission, I know this work couldn't be more important. Finally, I want to ensure the committee that this legislation is not about any one individual. This legislation is about leadership. It's about implementing the vision for our schools laid out in the blueprint. And of course, it's about the future success of our students. My office has worked closely with MSDE, the Superintendents Association, the county boards, and the AIB on this legislation to make sure we get it right. We look forward to continuing those conversations with this committee and ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1287.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. Marty, just here again for questions. Okay, any questions for Speaker Jones? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Madam Speaker. That concludes bill hearing on House Bill 1287. I do see we have a couple of chairs, House chairs here, but before we go to, I think I saw Delegates Corman and I see Delegate Chair Atterbury and Chair Corman. Can we just quickly bring up Mr. Treasurer? I know you're here, Treasurer Davis and Delegate Waters, just on the next bill is House Bill 1503. I'm sorry, Denise Roberts. My apology to you, Delegate Roberts. Yeah, bring the treasurer up here. And Delegate Roberts, you're going to present the bill, and then we've got the treasurer here, and then we'll move to our House chairs next. Okay.
Thank you. Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, esteemed members of Senate Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. For the record, my name is Delegate Denise Roberts, and I come before you today in support of the passage of House Bill 1503, which, if enacted, would prohibit the state treasurer and any person acting on the treasurer's behalf from participating in certain campaign finance activities during a regular session of the General Assembly. The bill is in no way meant to be an act against anyone. Rather, it is only meant to correct what appears to be an oversight in the Maryland campaign finance law. This issue was actually brought to my attention by way of a Maryland Matters article. Currently, state campaign finance law prohibits the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, the comptroller, and members of the General Assembly or anyone acting on their behalf from fundraising or receiving a campaign contribution during the General Assembly session. The only officer missing from the list is the state treasurer. And after discussing the issue with the current state treasurer, he was completely in support of this effort, which is why he is here to testify favorably. For these reasons, and in the spirit of good government, to bring all officers in line with the same requirements, I respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 1503, and thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Delegate Roberts. Mr. Treasurer, my former chair. Okay, why don't you tell us why you want this bill to pass?
I was going to say me too, actually. But look, it's real simple, Mr. Chairman. I know the reason why I'm here and I'm supportive of Delegate Roberts' bill is simple. There should be a level playing field for everyone. I was already adhering to those rules anyway. I'd done it for 27 years. There was no reason to change. But after seeing one too many stories, the thing I wanted to first of all explain, why does the state treasurer need to raise money? State treasurer doesn't need to raise money. Candidate Derek Davis or potential candidate Derek Davis would. As I look around this room, I believe just about every one of you, with the save of one exception, I served with in the House. And so the point is, you raise money not just for reelection, which is what I think, that article that came out was implying. You also raise money for future races or the potential for future races. We all know that the time to get ready is not when the election is there. You prepare in advance. I'm not looking to go anywhere. I think I got the best job. And whenever I look and see you all on the floor for 3 and 4 and 5 hours, I know I made the right decision. I like to text a few people on the floor going, so let's go to lunch when I know they can't go, stuff like that. So I'm happy where I'm at, but your contract with me, so to speak, runs till 2027. You all may decide at that point you want a different treasurer, or I may decide that it's time to move on. But whatever the case may be, you always stay prepared, and that's all this is. So I'm glad to follow the same rules that you all have. I really know no other way. And with that, I'll end it right there, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions for the sponsor, Delegate Roberts, or our treasurer, Treasurer Davis? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on House Bill. Oh, I'm sorry, question?
If we
Yes.
can just congratulate Delegate Roberts on her first bill in the Senate.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 1503. And I think Chair Adebayo may have stepped out. I see Chair Corman. We're going to take Chair Corman next. We've got House Bill 475. Mr. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair. I'm sitting here trying to figure out how I get invited to those lunches with Treasurer Davis. House Bill 475 is an open source phonics matching grant program. This is a small program we propose to create in the Maryland State Department of Education to frankly help families, but also teachers and tutoring programs get access to phonics materials. Our state, as you all know from your work with the State School Board and State Department of Education, is sort of shifting back to a phonics-based approach to helping people read. The acting superintendent's been very strong on this. This just offers another tool in the toolbox to help folks get access to open source materials. So instead of paying, really heavy licensing fees, getting access to materials they can use at home with their children, in neighborhood tutoring programs, or even teachers in the classroom. I know the Maryland State Department of Education has expressed concern about somehow this would be a sole source program. It's a grant program, so MSDE would be empowered to administer the grant program like they do many other grant programs and avoid any concerns like that. That said, of course, we always want to work things out with the departments. So I am meeting with them. I think it's possibly as soon as this afternoon to see if we can kind of come to grips with what their concerns are. I'm not sure I entirely understand them because they should, administer the grant program the way they do others. But the point of this is to get phonics materials in the hands of people who can make use of them with folks who need to read. So with that, Mr. Chair, happy to answer any questions or concerns.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Chair Corman? Okay, seeing none. Oh, no, we've got Senator Washington.
To
Yep.
clarify, good to see you, and thank you for bringing this bill. Is this a particular company or a particular brand? No, so that's my understanding, that this is just an approach.
Yep.
So, okay, I just
yep.
wanted to have that on the record, that this is not a particular company's specific version
Right.
of phonics.
No, there are various providers that provide open source materials. This is just a sort of a tool to get them in the hands of people. And if MSDE wants to have sort of more control over what the materials are, I'm certainly open to that. I think they probably have that in their sort of implicit authority here, but if there's other language that will satisfy their concern, as I said, I'm meeting with them later today.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
any additional questions for Chair Corman? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 475. We're going to now go to Chair Atterbury, who has 4 bills. Welcome, Chair Atterbury. Do you have any preference as to which one you take first? We've got 4. You want me to pick?
Whatever, you can pick.
Okay, why don't we start with House Bill 434? House
Okay.
Bill 434.
Okay, thank you. I'm Delegate Vanessa Atterbury here, requesting a favorable report on House Bill 434. And I will say Mr. Damaris is here if you have any questions, and so is Miss Lisa Jordan, but this will be very quick. This exempts qualified 501c3s from having to file a disclosure statement with the State Board of Elections if they file for spending at least $500 in a year. And that's all the bill does.
Hey, any questions for Chair Atterbury? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 434. Why don't we next take up House Bill 558, and you do have some witnesses on this one.
Okay,
If you want me to call them, I've got Lisa Jordan actually as one of you signed up favorable. We've got Christine Crone, and we've got Nicole Hollywood is virtual. Those are the only 3 favorable witnesses. Do you mind if I bring
yes,
them up?
please. Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay, and then we've got we do have our 1 virtual witness after that. So Chair Atterbury, it's all yours. Take the time you need to present
Okay,
House Bill 558.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Vanessa Atterbury here requesting a favorable report on House Bill 558. This is the second year that we have passed this legislation out of the House. And essentially what it does is with a little tweak to it, I will say, is we take the health curriculum framework and we put it into statute. So it basically says that each jurisdiction, each LEA has to, at a minimum, when they're teaching health, include mental and emotional health, substance abuse prevention, family life and human sexuality, gender identity and sexual orientation, safety and violence prevention, health and eating, and disease prevention and control. We continue to allow parents to opt out of the family life and human sexuality part. Actually, this was presented to this with my sixth grader, received an email. This is how it works in Howard County. Received an email. Your child is about to take sexual education. If you don't want him or her to participate, let us know and we'll provide them with another form of education. I let my child participate in it, but that's how it works. We do not let individuals in this legislation opt out of the gender identity and sexual orientation part of the curriculum. And in the House, we felt that was really important because we heard from a lot of individuals who felt like they were not reflected in the curriculum at their school. And quite frankly, they didn't learn the right way or wrong way to do things, good and bad touch per se, which I am very passionate about because a lot of you know I spent 7 years on judiciary and you hear things that you cannot hear on the Judiciary Committee. So for me, this is a safety measure for kids. in teaching kids the right things. And so they're not taken advantage of. And with that, I'll turn it over and ask for a favorable report.
Okay, thank you. Let's, Ms. Jordan, you want to lead off? And then we'll
Thank
go
you.
through all three witnesses and we'll take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Lisa Jordan with the Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault. We're here in strong support of Senate Bill 558, and it is really my pleasure to be able to visit EEE since it does get me out of JPR from time to time. The Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault, we're all of the rape crisis centers across the state of Maryland. So we help sexual assault survivors, including kids, in each of your jurisdictions. And we also have the Sexual Assault Legal Institute. We're supporting Senate Bill 558 because it really approaches health education holistically and helps create a holistic response, including things like sexuality, consent, and abuse prevention. And, you know, I testified in favor of this last year and in the House. And I have to say, after hearing the opponents, I'm even more passionate about this bill. There was this explanation about their perspective as good parents and, helping their children and all that. And I want to be sure that you here in EEE understand some kids are sexually abused. Some kids are sexually exploited. And it's really important that those kids have the lifeline of education to help them identify this. Sometimes they are too scared to ask their parents about what has happened. Sometimes they're abused by their parents or by a family member. And learning about these topics in school, it gives them the vocabulary, it gives them the ability to report and seek help from adults. This is a safety measure. I understand that people are concerned about kids hearing about different values. You know what? I heard about all kinds of different values in school than I did in my family, and it just prompts conversation. If it's a good, healthy family, it prompts conversation. But if it's not a healthy family, it is a lifeline. And so for those reasons, we urge a favorable report on House Bill 558.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the next witness. And I should have mentioned everybody's on other than the sponsor, on the 2-minute clock. So tell us who you are.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Christine Crum, here to testify on behalf of House Bill 558 and support. I'd like to point out that originally MedChi and the Maryland chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics was support with an amendment on this bill because they would like to have seen the opt-out provisions removed altogether. However, as the House has passed it, we still think it's a very strong bill that provides Maryland students with the ability to educate and protect themselves. And for that, we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to our virtual witness, then we'll take questions. Nicole Hollywood, you're there virtually. And again, you'll be on the 2-minute clock. So
Thank you, distinguished committee members. My name is Dr. Nicole Hollywood. I'm on the board of Salisbury PFLAG, and I'm a member of the Maryland LGBTQIA+ Commission. It's vital that our state's health education be updated to be comprehensive, inclusive, age-appropriate, and relevant. School-based health education helps people acquire an accurate and purposeful understanding of their own health that will strengthen positive attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors necessary for them to adopt and maintain healthy activities throughout their lives. Studies have found that students who receive comprehensive health education make safer, more informed, less destructive choices and are better at exerting agency over themselves. Further, the research shows that improving the health acumen of young people not only has a positive influence on their own choices, but can impact the behaviors of their peers, family members, and others in the community. An exhaustive systematic review of the literature published in the Journal of Adolescent Health in 2020 found that the outcomes of comprehensive health education include appreciation of sexual diversity, dating and intimate partner violence prevention, development of healthy relationships, prevention of child sex abuse, improved social emotional learning, decreases in homophobia and transphobia, and increased media literacy. Further, substantial evidence suggests sexual education beginning in elementary schools that is scaffolded and of longer duration, as well as LGBTQIA+ inclusive education across the school curriculum, improves all forms of mental health and healthy future sexual relationships. As a result, we strongly support this bill, and I invite you to look over the written testimony we have submitted, which includes a number of citations to relevant research.
Okay, thank you. So we'll open up questions either for the sponsor, Chair Atterbury, or any of the three witnesses. Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Delegate Atterbury, Madam Chair. First off, thank you for this bill. And I love the addition of safe and appropriate social media and internet use. I think that's fantastic and much needed. I have two questions for you. Do you have any idea, even if it's not by county, just generically, what percentage of parents opt out of their children participating in this program? So that's question number one. And then I have one follow-up.
I do not have the answer to that question. I would have to find that out.
I'm so curious. Are we talking about 5%? Are we talking about 30% in some jurisdictions? I'm curious.
I think it depends on what jurisdiction you're in. You know, I don't think in my county, I think a lot of folks would not opt out.
Right.
But in other counties, I'm sure a lot of parents would opt out.
I am so curious about that. And
Okay.
then the follow-up question is, you've got in here an annual report on June 15th each year, which makes total sense. I wonder two things. One, again, the opt-out numbers. I think MSDE could benefit from having that information. And then also, kind of as important or more important, what is being taught to the students who opt out? And how are they spending their time so that it's not wasted time? Yeah, so those are two things that occur to me. And if you have thoughts on any of those and could follow up with the committee, or
Okay, I can do
I'd love
that.
that.
I could do
Thank
that.
you, Mr. Chair.
Any additional questions for, again, the sponsor or the three witnesses? Okay, thank you. We do have a panel of three witnesses unfavorable. We've got Laura Bogley. Is Ms. Bogley here? John Wollums from MABE and Susie Scott. Those are the three unfavorable witnesses. And again, each of you will be on a 2-minute clock, and then we're going to go back to Chair Atterbury for other bills. Okay, Ms. Bogley, you want to lead off, and then and again, each of you is on the 2-minute clock.
Thank you, Chairman Feldman, members of the committee. I'm Laura Bogley, Executive Director of Maryland Right to Life. We respectfully urge your unfavorable report on this bill that far exceeds the state's limited authority to act in place of parents during the school day, particularly in matters of student health. Parents assigned to the public school system limited authority to provide academic instruction to our children. When the school system expanded instruction into the area of human reproduction, parents understood that schools would teach their children about puberty and how babies are made. At no time has the state obtained the consensus of parents to expand that instruction beyond basic biology into graphic sexual acts and recreational sex decoupled from human reproduction. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists recommends that sex education be medically accurate, evidence-based, and age-appropriate. They also recommend that sex ed include the benefits of delaying sexual intercourse and preventing unintended pregnancies. But Maryland law does not require education curriculum to be medically accurate nor age-appropriate. And from personal experience, it is neither. Both Planned Parenthood and Advocates for Youth have reported revenues received from providing curriculum and training in Maryland public schools. The state has allowed them to promote radical and high-risk sexual activity, global access to abortion for minors, and to instruct children how to evade their parents on matters of sex and abortion. Advocates for Youth develops the standards for Maryland school-based health centers. These centers already operate outside parental consent by distributing and implanting birth control, subjecting minor children to abortion counseling or referral, and in some cases providing or coordinating transportation to abortion clinics during the school day with approved medical absences. Now, through school telehealth appointments, school children may obtain dangerous chemical abortion drugs with no physician's examination or parental oversight. Maryland Right to Life trusts parents to make the best decisions about their children's health, beginning with curriculum. Once again, we urge you to put children and parents before politics and profit by issuing an unfavorable report on this bill. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wollums, you're next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, John Wollums representing the Maryland Association of Boards of Education, here today to testify in opposition to House Bill 558. MABE's opposition is grounded in the association's longstanding adopted positions and priorities in support of local decision-making authority in developing curriculum assessments, grading policies, and instructional programs in the context of what we affectionately refer to as the education arena, which is the collaborative, albeit authoritative process. The state board and MSDE do have authority that they can exercise, certainly to guide certain content standards, frameworks. But following that top-down process, if you will, there is flexibility historically and currently at play with local implementation of these state-level content standards, curriculum standards, and certainly at the instructional material level. And so with regard to this bill, as other curriculum bills, it is not on the merits of the subject matter being taught. And as Mabe's written testimony emphasizes, there is a long and successful history, we believe, dating back to 2019, 2021 to the present. We've had very recent comprehensive reforms of the state's health and human sexuality curriculum that are in place today. There were some bumps in the road with regard to implementation in certain jurisdictions. We believe those bumps have been smoothed out. And so in that light, we don't believe this bill is necessary to mandate a restructuring of the health and human sexuality curriculum at this time. And so for those reasons, Mabe requests an unfavorable report on House Bill 558. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I had called Susie Scott. I assume she's not here. Okay, any questions for our panel of unfavorables, the two witnesses? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 558.
Thank you.
Chair Atterbury, why don't you come back up on House Bill 1386? We've got three witnesses signed up favorable. Okay, actually, Ms. Scott, Chair Atterbury, just there is one witness who was sort of substitute for Ms. Scott. So what's her name? Is okay, Ashlyn Halber. Okay, so you're again on the unfavorable list, and are you here? Okay, you don't want to testify? You're good? Okay, well then I guess Ashlyn is not here. Elena Brewer. Okay, come on up, Elena Brewer. You're unfavorable, and you'll get 2 minutes, and then we'll go back to 1386.
Good afternoon. My name is Elena Brewer. I am a mother of 3 children in public schools in California, Maryland. As a naturalized citizen that was born and raised in the former USSR, I am particularly grateful for the opportunity to testify today and make my voice heard. This is my first time. I rise before you today as an expert, the best expert in education, health, sex education, etc., because I am a parent. I am an expert because I am a parent. And as a parent, I have the ultimate say in what my children are taught in public school. This bill is unconstitutional, taking control from local school boards, attacking the religious freedom of Marylanders, and attacking the rights of every single parent in Maryland. The word health is mentioned 34 times in this bill, yet there is nothing healthy in this bill. Nothing about health in this bill, because this bill can and will potentially do damage to our children. Teaching a radical gender theory to children through gender identity and sexual orientation lessons is not only dangerous, but it is destructive, because once this poison infiltrates a fragile mind, it can do irreversible damage to a child. This bill is an attack on every child's God-given identity and robs children of their innocence. What are you trying to accomplish through this bill? Are you trying to turn our children into sexual deviants? An enemy wouldn't do that. In the former Soviet Union, communists used the playing of tapes on a loop as a form of torture against Christian prisoners, brainwashing them 24/7 with communist propaganda. This was an attack on religious identity, yet even communists did not dare attack the God-given identity of male and female sex. Yet here we are with Bill HB 558 attacking the God-given identity of every single child in Maryland public schools. As you can tell, I'm quite unfavorable
Yes,
when it comes to this bill. Thank you.
I think we got that impression. Ms. Brewer, any questions for Ms. Brewer? Yeah, you got to stick around for questions. Okay, seeing none, you're good.
Thank you.
And that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 558. Delegate Atterbury, will come back up here on House Bill 1386. I've got on the list here Nashona Cass, Deborah Miller, and Lauren Lamb. Those are the only witnesses. They're all favorable on this bill. And Chair Atterbury, it's all yours. Take the time you need.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Again, Delegate Atterbury here asking for your favorable report on House Bill 1386. This bill was a piece of legislation, part of what the speaker called her decency agenda. And so it has the backing of the speaker, and essentially it requires it takes an inclusive approach to establishing an anti-bias teacher training program for public school employees. It requires MSDE in consultation with the Professional Standards and Teacher Education Board to develop guidelines for an anti-bias teacher training program that will be implemented in each county school system by the county board. It sets guidelines for the program that include raising awareness of biases, prejudices, intolerances, and discrimination faced by historically marginalized racial and ethnic minorities, and combating prejudice faced by historically marginalized religious minorities, including anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. The bill was amended pretty heavily in the House. And we added the anti-bias training is also to raise awareness of biases, prejudices, intolerances, and discrimination faced by African Americans, Native Americans, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders, Hispanic Americans, and other historically marginalized racial and ethnic minorities. And with that, I would ask for a favorable report.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Miller, why don't you grab the mic, and each of you will be on the 2-minute clock, and you're all signed up favorable.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman and members of the committee. I am Deborah Miller, the Maryland Director of Government and Community Relations for the JCRC of Greater Washington. Our education division focuses on combating school-based anti-Semitism, advocating on behalf of Jewish students, families, and employees, and promoting safe, hate-free learning environments for all students. I'm here today also representing the Baltimore Jewish Council and ADL in support of House Bill 1386. We believe that developing guidelines for anti-bias training for school employees will help reduce all forms of hatred, including racism, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia. School-based anti-Semitic incidents have skyrocketed over the last few years, and since October 7th, Montgomery County Public Schools have struggled with weekly and at times daily anti-Semitic incidents. In our experience, working extensively with the county, educators often do not have a deep understanding of exactly who Jews are and what anti-Semitism is. They also may have limited cultural competency about Jewish practice, Jewish history, and the importance of Israel to most American Jews. History has shown that bias, intolerance, and prejudice can lead to violence, dehumanization, and in the case of the Jewish people, extermination of 6 million. The JCRC strongly believes that school employees should have a baseline competency in all forms of hatred, including anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. This knowledge would help schools respond swiftly and effectively to bias incidents. It is not easy to disrupt a cycle of bigotry that involves perhaps the world's oldest hatred, and we must move from reactive responses to proactive cultural change. We therefore ask for a favorable report on House Bill 1386.
Okay, why don't you pass that mic to your left? Tell us who you are.
Good afternoon. My name is Nashona Kess. I'm the Executive Director for the Maryland State Conference NAACP. And good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. I want to commend the members of the House for providing these amendments to this bill. It's a critical importance that we address the bias and discrimination in our educational institutions. We commend their recognition that all members of marginalized communities are equally important and deserve equal protection and support. The provisions outlined in the bill underscore the significance of providing comprehensive anti-bias training for our educators. By acknowledging that anti-hate education must occur on multiple levels, the sponsors of this bill demonstrate a keen understanding of the complex challenges facing our schools and communities. At a time when Islamophobia and anti-Semitism are rampant, it is essential that we also acknowledge the centuries-long struggle that Black communities have endured against hate and racism in our schools and neighborhoods. This legislation recognizes that now is not the time to lower our heads and ignore the issues that surround us. Instead, it is time to forge ahead and declare enough is enough. We firmly believe that education is the key to combating hate and bigotry in all of its forms. By starting with our educators, we are taking a smart and proactive approach to lifting this burden from our communities. That by providing them with the tools and knowledge to recognize and address bias, it will not only benefit the students, but it will create a more inclusive and supportive learning environment for all members. Thank you, and we urge a favorable report.
Okay, let's go to our final witness on the bill and tell us who you are.
Chair Feldman, members of the committee, thank you for your time today. My name is Lauren Lamb, and I'm here in support of House Bill 1386 on behalf of the Maryland State Education Association, which represents 75,000 educators across the state. We're seeing a disturbing rise in hate crimes across our state, and educators have a critical role to play as leaders within their school communities. That's why we unequivocally support efforts to ensure that all educators are prepared to address alarming incidents of racism and prejudice. Although Maryland educators currently receive preparation and training in culturally responsive teaching strategies, we need to go beyond pedagogical practices to ensure that educators have a deep understanding of implicit bias and its implications. We must also provide educators with the tools to prevent and interrupt prejudice and hate through teaching wherever possible. Developing this training would help ensure that educators receive consistent, comprehensive support toward understanding and preventing bias, prejudice, and hate in all its forms, and that they are prepared to address a breadth of issues affecting students and their families. We appreciate that this training would be job embedded, meaning that it will be provided as part of established professional development time and recognized as a priority. We also applaud that this training will be adapted to local contexts so that educators can apply their learning to their classrooms and their communities. All students deserve to feel safe, seen, and supported at school and in their neighborhoods. Comprehensive anti-bias training for educators is a step in the right direction, and that's why I urge the committee to issue a favorable report on House Bill 1386. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the sponsor? Yes, Senator Gallion or the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Good to see you. So just looking through the changes adds a lot of different groups to the list. So I'm curious with this, I mean, why aren't we encouraging these school leaders to talk about being kind, respectful to everyone, no matter what their religion, what their race or anything? Why? I mean, we're grouping out a bunch of different groups and the list has gotten longer and longer according to this bill. Why wouldn't we just look at everybody? We're all part of the human race and say, hey, let's be kind to one another. Why don't we bring that forward instead of always cutting people into groups all the time? That seems more divisive to me. But you know, there's other religious groups that aren't mentioned. I know in history there have been Christian groups that have been persecuted. That's not listed in here. So why not just all the above, be kind to every kind type of approach?
Is that for me?
Yeah, is that directed to sponsor or anybody? Okay, if whoever wants to take a shot, we don't need 4 answers, but you can, whoever.
No, I wanted you to answer.
Me? Okay. Yeah, I think that this bill is comprehensive and is intended to address all forms of bias, hate, and prejudice, but it is particularly acknowledging the history of racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and other specific forms of hatred that have affected students and communities now and throughout history.
Okay, any additional questions for the sponsor for 3 witnesses? We've got Senator Watson.
Same lady who just responded. And your answer, is that because of the, what you say, perceived uptick in certain communities with respect to these groups? Because there's been an uptick in the Black communities for many, many years. and I don't recall the same fervor when it comes to addressing those issues. Can you respond to that?
I know that we've seen an increase in hate crimes across the board based on DOJ statistics from the last several years.
Okay, any additional questions for sponsor of the panel? Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 1386, which brings us to the final Atterbury bill, which is House Bill 1441. And we have, again, 3 witnesses signed up. Evelyn Owens, Christina Puch, and Joshua Michael from State Board of Education signed up there with an amendment or amendments. So those are the 3 witnesses on the bill. And Chair Atterbury, House Bill 1441. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is my last bill, then I will go across the street where I suspect most of your members are. So, here to request a favorable report on House Bill 1441. And I will have to say, Mr. Chair and committee, I love this bill. I know you're not supposed to love your bills, but I absolutely love this piece of legislation. MSEA could not be here to testify in support of this bill, but they are in full support of this legislation. And I just want to also, just to frame it, this it came out of trying to get the private providers. We all know the blueprint requires the private providers to partner with their local jurisdictions to provide pre-K. That has not been happening. The majority of the local jurisdictions have been requesting waivers. And in the House, at least, we've all heard from our providers. And so we wanted to try to fix this and come up with a solution so that we can get 3- and 4-year-olds in universal pre-K. And so this is actually a combined effort, had lots of meetings with members of the appropriations chair and his childcare folks on that committee, and subcommittee members on Ways and Means. And so this is what, it is a pretty comprehensive bill. So I'm just going to hit four highlights. So the bill, 1, extends several funding programs meant to support private pre-K providers, including pre-K expansion grants, the Maryland Excels participation grant, Child Care Career and Professional Grant Fund Program, and the Child Care Credential Program. 2, it modifies the waiver process for the number of publicly funded pre-kindergarten slots that must be made through the private provider. Rather than 40%, next school year, the slots are restarted at 10%, rising by 10% over the next 5 years to try to get to that 50% pre-K by private providers. 3rd, it modifies the staff qualifications for teaching in publicly funded pre-K programs. For public providers, a teaching assistant can be someone who has worked in early childhood for 15 years. For public pre-K teachers, it remains the same, the certification in early childhood or bachelor's plus pursuing the certification. And for private pre-K providers, a career ladder is created for several different paths to qualify as a lead teacher. And then finally, I'll say the bill provides economic development support to private pre-K providers in several ways. State created businesses support organizations that have to assist pre-K providers with business plans and other business support that they don't typically have time to do because they are caring for children. Additionally, MSDE has to establish hubs that aid pre-K providers with professional development and partnerships to help them. And with that, I would ask for a favorable report.
Okay, thank you. Let's go down. You want to lead off and tell us who you are, and each of you will be on the 2-minute clock.
Yes, my name is Evelyn Owens Williams. And first, I want to sing a song because I told my kids they're actually napping now that I would sing the song that I sing to them every day in the morning. And it goes like this. Hello, 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 and how are you? I'm fine, and I hope that you are too. Thank you. As an early childhood educator at Downtown Baltimore Child Care for over 38 years, I've taught and cared for hundreds of children. Downtown Baltimore Child Care is known throughout the region as an example of what's possible in high-quality child care environment. We are the place that gets it right for children, families, and teachers. All of our centers are accredited and have achieved the highest possible quality ratings from MSDE. DBCC currently employs 3 master's degree pre-K teachers, myself included. Yet our centers are not currently eligible for the pre-K expansion grant because of the teacher certification requirement. As someone who has devoted my life to early childhood education in the private sector, I have never pursued an MSDE teaching license, but I have demonstrated my ability to foster growth in children. To get certified at this stage in my career would require me to complete an approved MSDE program that requires field experience or student teaching. In other words, to become certified to do the job that I have been doing for decades, I would need to leave my job. This requirement is inequitable, unnecessary, and places an undue burden on quality early childhood educations and programs. The opportunity for mixed delivery is technically here, but the gates are still closed and keeping out experienced and talented teachers. DBC is in favor of House Bill 1441 because it recognizes quality childcare, provides and expands Maryland's ability to serve children and their families.
Okay, thank you. Let's
Great.
go down the
Yep.
table.
Good afternoon. I'm Christina Push, Executive Director of the Maryland State Child Care Association and Co-Chair of the Office of Child Care Advisory Council. Thanks to the esteemed EEE Committee for this opportunity to enthusiastically support House Bill 1441. A big thank you to Delegate Atterbury for a comprehensive bill which includes expanding alternative pathways for educators while also taking steps to build a bridge through hubs for LEAs and private providers to work together in partnership. The state is promising all 3 and 4-year-olds free or sliding scale public pre-K through a mixed delivery system. Almost all 24 counties in Baltimore City requested waivers as they will not have space nor reach the important necessary mixed delivery split with private programs. You need the childcare community for successful, efficient implementation. House Bill 1441 takes steps to address barriers and aligns with numerous AIB recommendations from the December 1st, 2023 report related to Pillar 1, including the importance of central and regionalized hubs to support the bridge between private and public partnership in critical ways. Hubs will build support systems to help community-based pre-K providers successfully establish pre-kindergarten programs while ensuring diversity, community outreach, grant writing, and business supports. Childcare is a necessary infrastructure in our economy and to our economy and communities. The childcare business model is not sustainable without preschoolers. Also, parents don't work 6.5 hours a day. If the measures in HB 1441 are not enacted, unintended consequences will include less access and affordability for infant and toddler care, more childcare providers closing businesses, and we've already lost over 800 post-pandemic, and more unlicensed illegal childcare, which leads to poor outcomes for children. HB 1441 take steps to overcome barriers and inequities without sacrificing quality or closing businesses by creating alternative pathways to be inclusive of community-based providers and programs and developing hubs for a strong infrastructure for Pillar 1 and our state. MSCC asks for a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Mr. Michael, final witness.
Great, thank you. Chair Feldman, members of the committee. My name is Josh Michael, Vice President of the State Board of Education, here today speaking on behalf of the board and also communicating a parallel position with the AIB. I first want to thank Chair Atterbury for bringing this bill. Our primary message is just how important we believe nearly all of the content of this bill is, and seeing that it passed this year. There's one amendment that we've communicated in writing, and happy to follow up on that, but I want to focus my testimony on emphasizing how important we think this is. It's a comprehensive bill that will build the mixed delivery system of public and private providers to expand high quality full day pre-kindergarten that the blueprint intends. We know that we have to have high quality programs to sustain the blueprint significant investments in pre-K if we want to invest in early childhood. Particularly as it comes to the labor market, this bill, you've heard us testify in K-12, we think this bill also strikes that balance of having high standards and multiple pathways to the profession, in this case for early childhood educators. We support the bill's intent to establish a career ladder framework for early childhood educators. And again, it has those multiple pathways. It also supports provisions in the bill that extend funding for crucial early childhood workforce grants. It extends the pre-K expansion grant to FY 2029, which would facilitate the establishment of new seats, which is critical as the funding for current pre-K seats lags in the blueprint bill. And it really is going to help us bridge and support that transition with pre-K formula funding. So in all, we are support with amendments, but want to emphasize just how critical we believe this bill is.
Okay, thank you to the whole panel. Any questions for Chair Atterbury or the panelists? We've got Senator Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for Josh Michaels.
Yes.
Is that it? Okay, so reading the bill, and I met with a group of parents just last week, and they were, kind of disappointed that all the pre-K slots go towards low-income households, but their children can never find space, and when they get into school, they're behind. We keep talking about expanding with the ultimate goal of being universal. How far away are we? When can every child who is 3 or 4 have access to, universal pre-K as, the state desires to do so?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're some distance from that. And there are 2 key levers, broad stroke, that I would highlight. One is the funding side. The other is the ecosystem. And this addresses the ecosystem to ensure that we have both the providers and the programs and the people to staff those programs. So I couldn't be more aligned with what you're saying. These are the things that we're grappling with at the state board. How do we stand this up? And this bill goes great distance to ensure that we're able to bring that we're really able to stand up the private provider ecosystem and the labor force that we need to actually build that. So that's where we'd like to go. We think this bill is critical to getting us where your constituents want us to get.
And I appreciate the intent of the bill, specifically appreciate the sponsor, but I hear about education related issues all the time. And a lot of these kids, from what I'm hearing, that are, 3, 4-year-olds, some of them aren't potty trained yet. Some of them are not where they need to be linguistically. And so it's all kinds of challenges just to get them in the program and get them up to speed. But still, we're leaving a large chunk of kids behind whose parents' income level don't qualify them to be able to participate in these programs because of, like you said, the space issues. Does this bill also address the educational requirements for the home daycare providers? It's my understanding that we talked last session about possibly having some type of curriculum or online curriculum where they didn't have to leave their, shut their business down to get the training to be able to qualify to be able to have, 3rd and 4th grade.
That's right. I mean, if I may, what this bill does, I mean, you've got Miss Evelyn here. She's an excellent example of a veteran educator who came up with a different set of training and has learned on the job. And so part of what this bill does is it gives us the flexibility to validate her expertise using the class assessment you'll see in there to say, yep, she doesn't have the degree, but she is a really good teacher and she deserves to be teaching children. And so that's the type of multiple pathway piece that we don't have right now in the current law that we need to help ensure Miss Evelyn and other teachers across the state, whether they be in centers or in family child care, we can validate their expertise and then we can say, yep, you're ready to have a pre-K slot in your center.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any
Mr. Chair?
additional? Yes.
Can I just respond to Senator Watson?
Absolutely.
My friend?
Yeah.
So just to reiterate, one of the things that was most important to me in this bill, and I say I don't have scientific evidence, I have mommy-based evidence, was the folks in the childcare center where my kids went, I'm certain, where they attended were not 4-year degreed, master degreed or anything, but they had been there a long time. They loved those kids. They taught my kids how to read. So they were kindergarten ready and all the things, potty trained, all the things that you just mentioned. So I think it's really important that we allow those individuals to remain there and not leave a profession that they love. And also we need more teachers. So why would we kick them out? So that is one of the things that's really important to me in this bill. And as Mr. Michael said, funding is an issue, but we have an answer for that. It's called iGaming.
Yes, her book on you. That was, we knew. Okay, any additional questions for the panel or for Chair Atterbury? Okay, seeing none, thank you for coming over here today with 4 bills. That concludes
Thank you, Mr.
the hearing on House Bill 1444. Folks, we have a bunch of sponsor only bills next, and I've got several House colleagues and I just took notes of who came in what order. I'm just going to take folks in the order they walked in the door. So Delegate Polakovich Carr, I think I saw you first, then I saw Delegate Miller right there. Delegate Guyton, Delegate Wilkins, Delegate Wells, Delegate Jones. We're just going to take it in the order. These are all sponsor-only bills. So welcome Delegate Polakovich Carr, and your bill is House Bill 1195.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. So for the record, I'm Delegate Julie Polakovich Carr here to present House Bill 1195. This is a bill that seeks to make our child care facilities safer for kids who have very severe life-threatening food allergies. As the committee may know, food allergies really have been on the rise, especially among children, and kids can be diagnosed at a very, very young age. For instance, my son was less than a year old when he was diagnosed with multiple food allergies. So when we're talking about pre-verbal kids and as they get older, pre-literate children, they really are dependent on the adults around them to keep them safe and to make sure that they are not eating a food that could otherwise cause very adverse reaction and possibly even death if not treated. So this bill would provide much needed information to our child care providers to know what to do, how to be prepared, how to prevent food allergic reactions from happening in the first place. And if this sounds like a familiar topic, it's because last year, thanks to the work of this committee and the Ways and Means Committee, we passed legislation that addressed this issue for public schools for K-12 settings. And already the Department of Health and Maryland State Department of Education, MSDE, have rolled out the new guidelines for our public schools to make those safer settings for older kids. So we're seeking to do the same thing for our very youngest students with this bill. So under the bill, the two departments would come up with guidelines for child care providers about basically how to prevent a child in their care from having an allergic reaction and what to do in the case of an emergency. MSDE would then create a model policy that would be available for child care providers. And if a child care provider does have a child enrolled who has a food allergy, that provider would be required to have a policy. It could be the model policy from the state, it could be a modified version, it could be their own policy, but again, basically outlining what they're going to do on the prevention side and in case of an emergency. And then the bill also includes an indemnity clause for child care providers and their employees. So if they act in good faith to administer an EpiPen or epinephrine injector, that they aren't liable for that. We already do that for school personnel in our public schools. Several other states have passed similar legislation, including Virginia, and notably the Maryland State Child Care Association supports the bill. If I could, Mr. Chair, I do just want to address, there were a couple of pieces of testimony that were new on this side that were informational with amendments, which I didn't even realize was a posture people could submit in, asking for basically a weakening of the language in the model policy that MSD would create under the bill. And I would just ask the committee to respectfully not take up those amendments for a few reasons. First of all, the model policy that MSD would create under the legislation already is optional. No child care provider has to adopt that policy. They can use it or they can write their own. It is the provider's choice. They already have full flexibility under the bill as it is before you. The second thing I would point out is that if a child care provider does have a student in their care who has a food allergy, that child likely has a prescription to an EpiPen or another type of epinephrine injector. So they're going to need to deal with storage of that medication. Again, we want to keep the model guidance and the model policy from MSD strong. And lastly, I would just point out that the two groups that put forward this suggested amendment to the committee appear to be religious organizations. I don't know for certain, but they might be letter of compliance childcare providers. And actually, those types of providers are not subject to the bill anyways. So for those reasons, I would just ask for a favorable report as it came over from the House. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Delegate Polakovich Carr, the sponsor? Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 1195. We'll go next to Delegate Miller, House Bill 1237.
Good afternoon, Chair Feldman and the distinguished members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. I am Delegate April Miller, and I am honored to be here today to present House Bill 1237 to you, which passed the House with unanimous vote and with incredible support from my Ways and Means colleagues. This bill establishes a task force to study the Maryland online IEP system and to provide recommendations to the Maryland General Assembly and the governor by June 5th, 2025. Many of you may be thinking, oh no, not another task force, or you're thinking, what the heck is an OIEP system? The MDO IEP system is the foundational software tool used by special education teams to do their jobs, to document and create individualized education programs, which are federally mandated through IDEA and are crucial for a student with any disability to be successful in the classroom. The MDO IEP system is used by 18,593 users and serves 84,102 students and their families across Maryland. The MDOIEP system has not been updated as technology has improved, nor is it friendly for the end user. Issues in functionality of the system significantly impact not only special education teachers and service providers, but also our general education teachers and special education students and their families every single day, yet they may not even know the role of the system in the problem. This bill represents thousands of special education teachers and service providers, parent advocates, and administrators that have literally been begging MSDE for years for a solution to improve this vital tool they use to craft the IEP to ensure that students receive the education and support in the classroom that they deserve. Take a moment to look over the groups that support this bill. MSEA, MABE, Parents Place of Maryland, Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council, Maryland Speech, Language, and Hearing Association, and special education teachers groups that normally have very diverse perspectives and opinions on the best path forward for our children's future. We are all united in saying that something has to change with the system and it needs to happen quickly. Every day we are losing amazing special education teachers that make the difficult choice to return to the classroom, to return to the gen ed classroom, to promote up to administration, or sadly leave the profession altogether. They are overworked, overwhelmed, and are reaching their breaking point, drowning in a sea of paperwork. This group will give them a voice to finally address this issue. Currently, 20 out of 24 jurisdictions use the MDOIEP, which was created back in the early 2000s by Johns Hopkins University with multiple updates over the years that never addressed the documented and shared concerns of the many system users. They need, as Frederick County described, an IEP software that involves collaboration from all stakeholders, addresses the needs of students with different learning styles, enables teachers to involve parents in their children's education, and improve classroom practice and student learning by allowing teachers to leverage technology to personalize effective case management. I'm concerned that as more school systems across the system decide to prioritize their stakeholders' concern, as they should, and search for solutions to meet their needs, we will wind up with a variety of different software programs being used, possibly leading to more difficulty collecting state-level data and more difficulty for families as they move around the state. And in preparing for today, I spoke with one of my very best special education teachers that I know. She absolutely loves teaching middle schoolers. I went through some of the issues with the MDIOP system with her. Take a moment to think about your work life before Google Docs. Think about putting hours of work into a brief, a report, a paper. And now think about her day. So she writes a beautifully perfect IEP. That could take hours and hours of her time. And she could lose it all in an instant because there's no autosave function. There's no autofill. There's no back. Think of what that can mean for a document that is 40 to 100 pages long. And she's on a timeline by law. She has only so many hours in a day, as do the other professionals that have to put information into this system. They may share a planning period, but only one person can have access to this document at a time. And for a new user, the system is overwhelming and difficult to learn. After she successfully creates the most perfectly designed IEP and saves it, now she has to get that information to the classroom teacher. Our general education teachers do not have access to even a simple page or form that can be easily printed that will give them the critical information about their students' disabilities, their needed classroom support, and the students' carefully crafted goals or any other information that will help their students succeed. And yet we are asking classroom teachers to differentiate that instruction, and we hold them accountable to the very goals that were written without giving them a consistent way to get the information they need. They rely on case managers who evidently must create a special spreadsheet to pull information together and delete the information that isn't relevant and then print it all out and give it to the team and give it to the classroom teacher. It shouldn't be this difficult, but it is. And she must also get this to the family before the meeting, as they are a critical part of this meeting. There is no parent-friendly form that can be given to them so that they better understand their child's educational goals and needs in the classroom. There's also no plain language button. It's all written in education ease, making it difficult for parents to be active participants in the IEP meeting, which can last for hours. This issue is compounded when English is a challenge for the family. There's no button that you can push to immediately translate the document into Spanish or any other language. It takes 30 days to have this documented translated for families, and that's the earliest. And they only translate the final IEP document that the family is supposed to receive 10 days ahead of time by law. Here's what actually happens. They get an English version. They have their IEP meeting with an interpreter trying to give them the information. And then in 20 to 30 days, they get the document in their native language, if all goes well. At the end of the conversation, my amazing special education teacher friend said the very thing I want you to remember. She said, and this is why I'm no longer in special ed. She's now an assistant principal after years and years and years in special ed. It is imperative that we give these professionals an updated foundational tool to do their jobs now, because we can spend billions of dollars on education. But if that general education teacher does not have the tools to implement that IEP and that student doesn't get the support they need, they will be left further and further behind. Please be a voice for our special education families and teachers and give a favorable report to House Bill 1237. And they may have sent some amendments as well, some friendly amendment. I do consider them friendly amendments with mild adjustment for reducing the number of recommended people on the committee that they recommended in it. So
Okay,
thank you. I thank you for your time and a little
Okay.
bit of latitude with my
Oh, we-
presentation.
And we just met for the first time yesterday, so
We
it's
did.
timely.
We did.
Okay, any questions? We've got Senator Lewis Young for Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome to AAA.
Thank you, sir.
I do have a question for you, which addresses your opening statement. Are you aware of the Blueprint Special Education Work Group? Kelman Hedelman, if he doesn't share it, he's very involved in the leadership. And one of the mandates of that work group is to review methods of teaching for students who receive special education in public schools. So my question is, wouldn't your particular issue fit within the scope of this already established work group? And why would we need an additional task force, given the issues you mentioned appear to be within the scope of this work group?
I would say that's describing methods of teaching, which is a little bit different. This is the very foundational software tool, and the work group would be specific to looking at that. And this has been going on. MSD has many, many chances. They've looked at different iterations. They have heard these complaints. Actually, when I was on the Board of Education in 2017, I sent a letter to MSDE because we had a strategic special education work group. And most of these concerns were listed out in the letter. As we pulled together parents, advocates, teachers, special ed teachers, gen ed teachers, we had that all in a strategic work group. We gave all that information to the state and none of it was addressed. And this was in 2017, 2018. So it still continues to be a problem. In the work group, I am aware of the work group. They actually, some co-chair reached out to me and they actually weren't considering looking at it until we started bringing up, they started hearing more information. But this is so specific and so foundational, and there have been so many issues in it. It is, I can't even stress to you, talk to some of the teachers, talk to some of the special ed teachers. It comes back time and time again to this system. It is critical that we get this right.
Yeah, if I could follow up, I don't doubt that some of these specifics are needed. I'm just questioning whether we need to have another task force or if it wouldn't fit under the scope of an existing work group. And what I mentioned to you is only one. Have you spoken with either anyone from AIB or Kelman Hedelman about
I spoke
splitting
with
the cost?
MSDE. I actually,
No, AIB.
actually, I will tell you, Senator, I actually wasn't going to put the bill in. I was not going to put this bill in because I reached out to MSDE and I said, here's the concerns I've had about this. Here's what I've been hearing for years. And just, could you let me know if it's being addressed?
Okay.
It took them 3 to 4 weeks to even get back to me.
Okay.
And then I'll just, yeah, it took that long. So I thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for Delegate Miller? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 1237. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're going to next go to Delegate Guyton. And as I said, I've got Guyton, Wilkins, Wells, Jones, and Boyce and Rosenberg. But okay, Delegate Guyton, we're here on House Bill 331.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the EEE Committee. It is lovely to see you again many times in this last week. I am here today, Delegate Michelle Guyton from District 42B in Baltimore County, for your consideration and hopefully support of House Bill 331. So this bill simply codifies a 2019 guidance letter from the State Board of Elections that authorizes childcare expenses as an appropriate use for campaign funds. Okay. Since the letter was requested in 2019, 5 years ago, only $522 have been reported for this purpose. And we don't know who that was, but we may assume that it is the person who requested the guidance to begin with, but it's not something that's widely known as available. The purpose of this change in this codification is to encourage and to support wider, more inclusive participation in the political system. Currently, parents of young children and dependents with significant disabilities are seriously disincentivized from running and serving an elected office. I've said before on the House side that I myself could not have run for the position that I have before I was almost 50 years old, not because I just had 3 young children, but because some of them had significant disabilities and needed specialized care. So the importance of the codification of this guidance, and this is an important point, this really can't be overstated, right? Codification is absolutely necessary to protect us from political changes, to promote awareness of this opportunity, and to provide, more importantly, peace of mind and consistency for those who may run and then become elected to office, so they know that this is there for them if they need it. So for these reasons, I request a favorable report on House Bill 331.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Guyton. Any questions for the sponsor? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That
Thank you so much.
concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 331. We're going to next go to Delegate Wilkins, House Bill 627. And the floor is yours, Delegate Wilkins.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I believe I may have had some witnesses on this one. If
You know, we do have some witnesses on this one. I
the-
apologize. I thought it was sponsor only. Yeah, we do. I've got Joanne Antoine. I've got Nicole Porter, Gregory Brown, and then we have one virtual witness. Does that sound about right?
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you so much,
okay.
Mr. Chair.
Okay,
All right.
yeah.
Greetings,
fine.
Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and distinguished members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. I am Delegate Janelle Wilkins for the record, and I'm pleased to present HB 627, Automatic Voter Registration at Correctional Facilities. This bill adds the Maryland Correctional Facilities to the locations in which we conduct automatic voter registration. As you know, Maryland passed automatic voter registration in 2018, and we require automatic voter registration at certain state facilities such as the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange, local departments of social services, and the Maryland Transit Administration. This bill simply adds Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services to the list of agencies required to conduct automatic voter registration at the time of release. So how this would work is that for an incarcerated individual, as you know, once they are released, their right to vote is restored. And so this legislation would make sure that our Department of Corrections goes ahead and automatically registers them to vote upon release of their time of confinement. You still, of course, have to be a U.S. citizen, a Maryland resident, at least 16 years old. And once again, this just makes sure that we automatically register those individuals who are returning to our communities. I urge a favorable report on House Bill 627.
Okay, thank you. Let's tell us who you are, and you'll be on the 2-minute clock, okay? You sound favorable.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan. For the record, Joanne Antoine with Common Cause Maryland, testifying in support of House Bill 627. I'm also testifying in Oh my God, I'm at a loss for words, but on behalf of the Expand the Ballot, Expand the Vote Coalition, which is led by our formerly incarcerated advocates, as well as the Everyone Votes Maryland Coalition. As a state, we've made a lot of progress in terms of ensuring access to the ballot and voter registration for both currently incarcerated citizens and returning citizens. This bill would move us one step forward. Apologies. Right now, returning citizens are receiving paper voter registration forms. Just as any other resident, the likelihood that it get returned via mail or to a local board of elections is very low. This would ensure that, again, they're provided the opportunity to opt in during the release process. More importantly, it hopefully eliminates any confusion around their eligibility to vote overall. DPSCS does have all of the necessary data regarding citizenship, so they should be able to identify who is eligible to vote and who would be, directed to use the program. Maryland would be the second state to do this, so we'd be making history. Michigan passed a bill similar to this just a few months ago. So again, we'd be leading the way. If you look at the testimony, you'll see that we received support from the National Voting in Prison Coalition, which is made up of a number of national organizations throughout the country who are hoping to do the same in their states, as well as the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and the Campaign Legal Center. So I urge a favorable report. I hope that we will prioritize our neighbors, our loved ones who are coming back home, who want to be active participants in our democracy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sir, why don't you put that mic a little closer to you, okay? Tell us who you are, and you've got the 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Gregory Brown from the ACLU of Maryland. And I just wanted to echo the testimony of my colleague, Joanne Antoine, and just say that Maryland needs this bill to enfranchise a formerly disenfranchised population of voters. This bill builds on the Value My Vote Act of 2021. And more importantly, data shows that when you designate somewhere as an automatic registration facility, it often becomes one of the few places that have the highest amount of new registrants. So in that mode, we would just like to echo our support for the bill and urge a favorable report.
Okay, thank you. We do have one virtual witness in the queue. Okay, Ms. Porter, again, you signed up favorable. You got 2 minutes, okay?
Yes. Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and to Delegate Wilkins for her primary sponsorship of House Bill 627. I am Nicole Porter, Senior Director of Advocacy at the Sentencing Project for the Record, which is a national organization, and apologies for not being able to be there with you all in person this afternoon. I am requesting a favorable report on House Bill 627. I submitted written testimony, so I'm going to focus my comments this afternoon on the community safety benefits of the bill. Now, there is a community safety benefit to guaranteeing the vote for persons with past incarceration experience. There's been several studies that I've cited in my written testimony that finds voting among several pro-social behaviors, including getting an education and other forms of community engagement, that have been found to reduce future criminal legal contact for persons with prior justice involvement compared to others who are not voting. So for your colleagues and members in the committee who are concerned and motivated by community safety practices, voting and guaranteeing the vote for those impacted by the justice system is among best practices that have been found to do that. House Bill 627 would also continue Maryland's leadership in guaranteeing voting rights for marginalized communities. Joanne spoke to this earlier. Maryland is among 26 states and Washington, D.C. that expanded voting rights to citizens with felony convictions since 1997. Those reforms have contributed to over 2 million people getting their voting rights back nationally, and including the expansion of rights, guaranteeing access to the ballot and the ability to participate fully in the registration process is among best practices to guarantee the vote. So with that, the Sentencing Project urges a favorable report of House Bill 627 and thanks the committee for your consideration of this important legislation. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Delegate Wilkins or yes, Vice Chair Kagan?
I have two questions. So thank you, Delegate Wilkins, for your leadership, and always good to have great witnesses. I have two quick questions. One is always the issue around voter registration location. So I'm about to be a returning citizen. I want to register to vote. I'm not quite clear where I'm going to live yet. How do they pick where they register so they know which districts they're going to live in?
Sure. So
And
when
then
someone,
one follow-up question.
do you want to
Sorry.
ask both now or? Okay.
Either way.
So when an individual is returning, they do have a location that they're returning to.
Okay.
So they would be registering to vote wherever that location is. So they do have a destination, and this would occur at their release. I call it a release meeting, where they go through the paperwork. They're usually talking with an individual who's employed by the state, and they're sort of going through all of their release protocol.
Yes.
So they do have an address that they are returning to.
So I'm aware of short term. I need to know where I'm staying tonight, but I might be staying with a friend or a cousin or sleeping on a couch, but it's not my permanent place because I want to get a job. And anyway, but thank you for the answer. The other question is, I see the effective date is January 1 of 25. And I assume that was the State Board of Elections preference or someone else's preference. So, or can you speak to that in terms of not being able to vote this fall?
Sure. I think as your committee probably always hears from the State Board of Elections, they really prefer not to make major changes before an election. So that has definitely been heard loud and clear. But in addition to that, our Department of Corrections will need to update their systems because automatic voter registration is usually done electronically. And so we also want to provide time to update the system so that the automatic voter registration can take place.
Thank you. I assumed both of those answers, but it's nice to get them out in public and on the record and all that. So thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for Delegate Wilkins or the panelists, the witnesses? Seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 627. We're going to next go to Delegate Wells, I see in the House, then we'll go to Delegate Jones, and then Delegate Rosenberg. Delegate Wells, House Bill 1254, and you are the only witness. No, that's not true.
Yeah.
Actually, never mind. We had a little technical issue here. Okay, we're good.
Yes.
So I've got Molly McGriff,
Yeah.
Kayla McDonough
Okay.
are the two favorables, and then we do have two witnesses signed up unfavorable. So
Great.
to you, Delegate Wells.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you so much, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, members of the committee. For the record, I am Delegate Wells, here to present on House Bill 1254. As many of you know, accessible and well-staffed childcare services are essential to Maryland families and to Maryland's economy. The recent State of the Economy report issued by the Comptroller notes the importance of adequate childcare as a key component to addressing workforce shortages, especially getting more women back into the work field sector. The General Assembly and the administration have taken great steps to adequately fund childcare providers and families, as you've heard some today. But there are also administrative barriers that prevent individuals from fulfilling this vital service. House Bill 1254 aims to ensure timely communication from state agencies to both employees and employers in the childcare space. The bill does not alter background check requirements for childcare workers, but it does ensure that they are able to fulfill these requirements in a timely manner and that vacancies do not go unfulfilled due to a lack of communication throughout the background check process. This is done by establishing a department within the State Department of Education for the dedicated purpose of processing and managing information about criminal history records checks for individuals providing childcare services. In establishing this department, it will allow the state to ease some of the backlogs in background checks locally. The bill also ensures that the state is meeting federal timeline requirements to maintain access to critical federal funding and support for providers and families. Centralizing the background check process will also allow employees and providers to better communicate and share talent across regions in the state, which is essential to a robust childcare network. The bill also helps to standardize background check processes across the state to ensure that protections are applied similarly in all regions and that all children are benefiting from those protections. We did add an amendment to the legislation in the House to address the fiscal note and to assure that this is able to take place with the current resources. So with that, I would urge a favorable report on House Bill 1254. Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's go to the two panelists and then we'll
Sure.
take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Caitlin McDonough on behalf of United Way of Central Maryland in support of House Bill 1254. And then thank you to Delegate Wells for describing the bill. Again, I think that the primary focus of this bill, and it does include kind of several different provisions, is to standardize and streamline the communication process associated with current background check requirements for both providers and for both the employer providers and then the applicants to provide services to children. That 10-day communication piece is particularly key. And all that would require of the department is that they let applicants know that their applications are complete, that they have submitted all the information they need in order to move forward with the background check process. We have heard, and have experienced in our own childcare programs where applicants just don't hear back and they don't know whether they've done something wrong or there's an issue, but an issue with the application. And then there is a 45-day requirement that they be informed about their eligibility based on the background check process within 45 days. That mirrors what's already in guidance from federal law and that the department should be complying with currently. There is one additional timeline in the bill that if it is a concern, particularly to other providers or to child care organizations, that we'd be happy to strike from the bill if that's an issue. It basically requires a 5-year eligibility for certain checks that are part of the comprehensive background check. It is not our intent to alter any of the current requirements as far as what requirements. It's just streamlining the administration process. So if that is a concern, that's something we'd be happy to amend out of the bill. And then finally, yes, so there are the amendments. So what we would see this being able to be accomplished by not so much creating new positions within the department as shifting specialists from some of our regional departments to a centralized unit within MSDE, and they would solely handle the background checks so that they're consistently being applied across the state. So we don't see it as necessarily creating new positions so much as a reorganization, and those amendments were to serve to address that kind of fiscal impact of potentially having new people. And with that, I'll turn it over to Molly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Molly, you're up 2 minutes.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair. My name is Molly McGriff. I'm the Senior Director of United for Childcare with United Way of Central Maryland. Here today in support of House Bill 1254 with amendments. I have worked in childcare licensing in both New York State and Maryland, and I've seen firsthand the policies and procedures we're talking about. House Bill 1254 strengthens protections for children at no cost. All existing childcare background checks will remain, but they'll be done more efficiently so that people can start working faster. House Bill 1254 aims to address one key piece of the childcare staffing crisis. Workers and licensed childcare programs cannot begin working until they have heard from Office of Childcare that they have passed comprehensive background checks. The background checks are numerous and complex. House Bill 1254 will require Office of Childcare to create a dedicated team dedicated team to process childcare background checks, freeing up the remaining licensing specialists to complete their other duties. The dedicated team will be more efficient and will create consistency between jurisdictions. When I was a licensing specialist, I spent about 70% of every single day clearing folks to move between programs. Also, when I talk to current licensing specialists, they're excited about this idea. It is truly what is needed. No special staff need to be hired. We simply need to rearrange the job duties of the existing 100 licensing specialists on staff at Office of Childcare. House Bill 1254 will also require clear and timely communication. Childcare programs will have clarity on whether staff are cleared to begin work, and applicants will know if their paperwork is incomplete within 10 days. This bill, with an amendment removing language referencing 5-year validity of background check results, meets the needs of those impacted. I ask that you support House Bill 1254 so we can ease the staffing crisis in childcare and get people to work. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for our sponsor, Delegate Wells, or the two witnesses? Okay, seeing none, we do have, thank you. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Senator Brooks. My apologies.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah. MSDE, they had opposed the bill and there was, they had concerns about you moving from the 5-year check base to a 2-year. Have you all squared that up with them?
We'd be happy to just strike that provision from the bill. It's not really central to the primary theme. So
okay, all right, good. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, we do have 2 witnesses signed up unfavorable. Sarah I see Sarah. You have a different last name, I think, than last time I. And Beth Morrow. We've got two witnesses signed up on favor. I don't want to mess up the proper pronunciation of your new married name.
It's Mickey like the mouse, but it is
Mickey.
spelled very
Gotcha.
unusually.
Okay, Miss Mickey and Miss Morrow. Okay, whoever wants to start, and you've got each of you 2 minutes unfavorable.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Sarah Mirsky-Mickey, Deputy Director of the Baltimore Jewish Council, here today representing the JCCs and other Jewish child care centers in Greater Baltimore. We're here today in opposition of HB 1254 as amended. We were originally supportive with amendments to the bill as introduced in the House, and you can read about those amendments in my written testimony. But due to the past version, we must oppose. The House passed version of the bill goes against the original intent, creating a law that allows MSDE and the Department of Human Services to ignore federal requirements, ultimately harming child care centers in Maryland. Federal requirements state that state agencies have to be expeditious but not exceed 45 days to get back the CJIS reports, know whether a potential staff member passes their background checks. We understand currently that MSD and the department do not always get that information to child care centers within that time frame, which is the original reason for this bill. However, 45 days would mean child care centers having to shut down their classrooms, leaving both the child care centers and parents in a bind of staff turnover. During a time when over 700 child care centers closed during COVID, where we have child care staffing crisis, 45 days is far too many. Our original amendment asked to follow precedent from previously passed legislation noted in my written testimony to lower that turnaround time to 7 business days. However, HB 1254 as amended in the House puts into statute that the state can negate federal requirements by codifying that MSDE and the Department of Human Services do not need to meet the federal 45-day rule if they do not have enough staff and or resources. This not only goes against the intent of the bill, it codifies the problem the bill aimed to address by giving MSD and the Department of Human Service a legal out for the 45-day requirement. For these reasons, we ask for an unfavorable report on HB 1254. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Beth Morrow, Director of Public Policy with the Maryland Family Network, here in respectful opposition to House Bill 1254. I want to first start by acknowledging the good intentions of the sponsor and the lead advocacy organizations. The idea of centralizing the background check process has the potential to bring consistency and efficiency. My concern lies with the capacity of the Office of Child Care. Without additional resources, I believe they would be very strained to execute the bill as drafted. Licensing staff are already overburdened in the regions across the state. And pulling people away from their primary duties to stand up a separate unit would be burdensome without additional resources. Additionally, the way the bill alters timelines associated with criminal background checks and child protective services checks is just unacceptable from a child safety perspective. So I'm striking the provision that would make them valid for 5 years would be advisable. We'd appreciate a more deliberate and comprehensive look at this issue in the interim. We'd be happy to continue the conversation around improving the background check process. But right now, I urge an unfavorable report on House Bill 1254 as drafted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for our 2 witnesses unfavorable? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill 1254. We're going to go to Delegate Jones. And then we have 3 more bills, and then we're going to go to, I apologize, I know you've been sitting here for Delegate Boyce for quite some time, and we'll go next to you, and then we'll go to Delegate Rosenberg. Okay, Delegate Jones.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chairman. For the record, I'm Delegate Dana Jones, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the Education, Energy, and Environmental Committee. I come before you today to introduce HB 700, which will expand ways we can assist our local boards of elections with the recruitment and retention of election judges. And I'm thrilled to have State Board of Elections Administrator and friend Jared Demarinis here for questioning as well. Last session, this committee passed HB 1200, which raised the minimum floor for election judge pay to $250 $250 per day worked and $100 per day worked bonus to returning election judges. This was essential legislation as in the previous election cycle, many of you remember, it was widely known and reported that counties were facing significant struggles with recruiting election judges. Just weeks before the 2022 gubernatorial election, Baltimore City was short more than 1,000 judges, and my home county of Anne Arundel was short 300. However, pay is not the only way which we can improve recruitment and retention of our judges. HB 700 expands on last year's efforts with some additions and a slight revision. First, returning election judge has been defined as a judge who served in the immediately preceding presidential or gubernatorial election. This will provide needed clarity to local boards as they implement the new compensation policy. Second, we want to encourage our youth to participate in civic engagement, as I know many of you also encourage. To do this, the bill would allow public school students to earn service learning hours for graduation, while also receiving compensation for their hard work. This incentivizes young citizens to foster a deeper sense of civic responsibility and introduces them to the significance of this responsibility and work. Additionally, we extend administrative leave while serving as an election judge for county employees. This provision is currently allowed for state employees for reference. Lastly, some of you might know there is a long and arduous a packet of paperwork required to apply, serve, and receive compensation for work as an election judge. Additionally, this packet can vary in length greatly depending on locality, and as a result, its complexity can be a roadblock to involvement. So HB 700 directs the state board to adopt regulations that standardizes and minimizes the forms and documentation required to be a judge statewide. This will require significant coordination between the state and local boards. However, the state board is prepared and understanding of this concerted effort that it will take. Finally, I do want to mention quickly that my office has been in contact with the Maryland Association of Elected Officials regarding their questions on implications of the effective date of the bill. So I just want to state on the record that I would be happy to delay an effective date should the committee, of course, see fit. Potentially, maybe we could bifurcate. I'd hate to lose an entire election cycle of some of our youth having the ability for the service learning hours, but the rest of the bill, and that's just in section D, but the rest of the bill for sure, if the committee sees fit, obviously January 1st. And with that, I respectfully urge a favorable report on HB 700. I thank you.
Okay, any questions on HB 700 for Delegate Jones? We've got Senator Carozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hi,
Delegate,
Senator.
thank you for the bill. And
Thank you.
you did reference the Maryland Association of Election Officials, and some of us work very closely with our election officials at the local level to understand how different proposed legislation and policies might affect. I know you mentioned the date, which sounds like that's one issue, but wanted to ask you, did you get any input from these local elected officials or from the association in general on how the youth engagement piece would work as far as like the training or supervision?
Well, it would be the same training for which all other judges receive. And these individuals would be 16 and older. So that would be juniors and seniors, in some cases, the seniors.
Okay, so it would be folded into the current process.
That is correct.
Okay. thank
Yes,
you.
no special training or
Okay.
additional. Thank you so much for the question, Senator.
Okay, any additional questions for Delegate Jones? Seeing none, that concludes bill here on House Bill 506.
Thank you so
We
much.
do have just one more sponsor only bill. I am going to bring up Leslie. Why don't you come up here? You probably waited the longest. I think you were here from the beginning, and my apologies to Delegate Rosenberg, but the sponsor only, you're the only witness, then we'll go to Delegate Rosenberg next. But and we're on sorry, bill number here. We're on House Bill 506.
Thank you
Yes,
so
I think
much,
I
Mr. Chair.
mispronounced. Last bill was House Bill 700. We're on House Bill 506.
Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. I am Leslie Gray DeVivo here on behalf of Delegate Regina T. Boyce to testify
on HB 506, sexual harassment prevention training for Morgan State University and St. Mary's College of Maryland. HB 506 authorizes an amendment to Article State Personnel and Pensions to allow Morgan State University and St. Mary's College of Maryland to offer sexual harassment prevention training through webinars, computer-based or online platforms. This flexibility in training delivery methods already provided by schools within the University of Maryland system, such as University of Maryland College Park and University of Maryland Baltimore County, will accommodate the diverse schedules and learning preferences of university employees. This bill ensures that the shift to virtual or online training formats, the content and quality of sexual harassment prevention training remain adequate. It mandates that an evaluation to assess employee comprehension of training objectives, ensuring that employees receive effective education on federal and state laws, best practices, remedies, and procedures related to sexual harassment prevention. The delegate and Morgan State University and St. Mary's College of Maryland, thank you for your time and consideration of HB 506 and urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for our representative for Delegate Boyce on House Bill 506? Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on House Bill
Thank you.
506. Thank you. And Delegate Rosenberg, thank you for your patience. Appreciate it. We're on House Bill 333, which is our final bill for today. We do have at least one virtual witness signed up. I'm not sure. Kashana Cross, we're going to try to bring her in, and then we do have a panel of 3 unfavorable. So Delegate Rosenberg, HB 333.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. There is a significant growth of deceptive election literature, if you will, on the internet. And what House Bill 333 attempts to do is to adapt to that circumstance by providing for requiring the state board to create a portal that whereby citizens or members of the public could send to the board through this portal what they consider to be deceptive misinformation about the time, place, and manner of elections, what is voting rights under Maryland law, and then also misleading information about the results of an election. The bill as it is before you now, as amended by the House, does not impose any requirement on the platform where this literature may have originally been posted. That was the cause of opposition to the bill in the House, but we have addressed that opposition, we believe, in response to advice from the Attorney General's office. So the bill before you addresses the problem, which is not a new problem. For instance, more than 10 years ago, there was literature distributed in certain neighborhoods the week before the election, urging people to vote on Thursday of election, gave the date is November 8th instead of November 6th, implied that if you owed your rent or your BG&E bill, you couldn't vote. Well, that was not at the time illegal under Maryland law because it was considered influencing someone's decision whether to vote. So we modified the law after that incident to include that among the violations of the election law that are criminal. And what I'm asking the committee to do today is in a similar vein, because people are using the internet to post misleading information. That's primarily what the bill is addressing. It's not limited to that, but we would now give the state board, our neutral arbiter, not a campaign committee, but to give the state board a neutral arbiter the authority to
either inform the public of this misinformation, or if it, in the view of the board, reaches the status of a violation of the law, to refer this information to the state prosecutor. The bill also would modify the definition of influence to make it clear that it speaks to using pressure, deception, or authority to induce an act or change a decision or act regarding the election laws. So that is what the bill would do, and I would urge your support.
Okay, let's pull up your one virtual witness, then we'll take questions. Let's see if we can find Kashana Cross in the queue. Okay.
Hello, thank you. Thank you.
You're signed up favorable and you've got 2 minutes. Favorable with an amendment, I'm sorry, 2 minutes.
Thank you kindly. And I am favorable with an amendment for this particular bill. The number one thing that I highlight, which the presenter has already addressed, which is the need to circumvent the illogical use of the media and artificial intelligence, therefore, to garner support. Lies is something that is really tragic when it happens in the media. And so relative to the Office of the State Prosecutor, my amendment would be to encourage that news media sources are held accountable when they do not fact check. Being a former intelligence officer for the United States Air Force, one of the key things that I will tell you, facts are facts, and things can be misconstrued based on the facts that you present. News media nowadays has fallen into a very tragic state in which they are utilizing some news, not all news. News should report the news, and it should not be slanted one side or the other. It's one of the most tragic things that have happened since the January 6th incursion. Its news has selectively written certain pieces of the news and left other parts out, which slants the purpose. The purpose is to slant the populace opinion to one side or the other. News should be the most trustworthy source that we have. Artificial intelligence is a key piece that's coming into our new 22nd century. We cannot escape it. What we must do, however, is to be able to decipher between its utilization and the facts, because now you can impersonate a person and they don't even know they're even speaking. So I'm grateful for this bill. I do want to add that one amendment that we extend to the Office of the State Prosecutor some leverage of fines relative to news media sources who have the requirement to check their sources and not just print the news. There's a lot of legislative law as well that needs to be accounted. Thank you so much for this bill.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the sponsor, Delegate Rosenberg, or the witness? Yes, Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you. Delegate Rosenberg, thank you for your leadership and your thoughtfulness.
Thank you.
So you probably remember the name of the legislator. I'm not going to say his or her name, but he used to say, is there a problem? And then is there a solution? And then I always say, you know, can we afford it? And is it viable? And is it in my lane? And blah, blah, blah. So I think you've totally hit upon a problem. I agree. I'm wondering, I have some questions about your proposed solution. So first off, I'm a candidate and someone says something bad about me. I go to this SBE website and I put up there, wah, 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 someone said something mean about me. And then how often does SBE curate it? How, like, can they remove it? Or would they say, actually, no, it was totally true and it stays up? Or could they delete something? How?
Let me read from the bill.
I'm in the bill. I'm in the bill.
Okay, so that would be on page 4, lines 22 to 25. The state board shall conduct a periodic review.
Yes.
So that's left up to the board, submitted by the public through the portal and to the extent necessary.
Sorry, are you in the reprint? Because
Yes.
that's not where I.
Well, that's, yeah, because you don't want to look at the bill originally because that
Right.
has all the
No.
language.
I'm in the reprint and page
Okay.
4, 24, 25 is all
It's
crossed out.
B2.
Hold
It's
on.
B2 in the bill.
B2, the state board shall conduct a periodic review. Yes.
Correct.
I get to
Okay, so
issue
that's-
corrective information. Yes.
so that's time-wise, that's a decision we've left in the House to the board. We don't say every 2 weeks or as we approach the election day itself, you have to do it every day. We didn't do that. It's periodic. I would also then call your attention to the definitions, 2-110, where we define election disinformation as incorrect or misleading information regarding the time, place, or manner of an election, election results, or voting rights. So your example would not come under this bill.
So this couldn't be a candidate or advocate wine fest.
Correct.
Okay. Again, sort of curating it, and I can envision it ultimately taking a lot of time. So would there be this sort of thing that, okay, so pivoting from a candidate, or a candidate, the other party, my opponent is suggesting that the election is next Wednesday rather than next Tuesday. Does that get put in like a waiting period, or SBE will figure this out and it doesn't get posted until it's verified?
Well, I would think that we would defer to the judgment of SBE that as you get closer to an election, they're going to be reviewing things more frequently.
Yes.
And I would also add that the budget has been amended to include money for additional staff person I think it's more to create the portal than to review it after it's up. But there is money in the budget for this, creating the portal.
And who do you envision the audience being of the portal? Someone posts something. Is it the press that would hear about it? Is it the average voter who would then know they were given inaccurate information?
Well, one target is the board itself.
Sure.
Because they then have the authority to tell the public, or in the worst cases, if it's potentially a criminal act, the state prosecutor. But I would think vigilant campaigns, the press, everybody, it's out there, and they certainly would have the right to say, any one of those parties, to contact the board after something's been posted and say, you need to do something about this. It's urgent. That's certainly permitted, allowable, encouraged.
Sure.
Because I would assume it's not in the bill, but the board, this would be emphasized, I would think.
Right.
The public would be informed of the fact that here we are.
One last question, Mr. Chair. Delegate Rosenberg, in the reprint, page 6 of 7, lines 24 through 26, I realize that your bill did not touch this, but it seems like something that if this bill were to move out of committee, it seems like something that needs to be updated. It says if the people are engaging in contact the results or has the intent to result in the denial or abridgment of the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race, color, or disability. That list seems really outdated and really small. Would you have any problem if this were to be extended?
It should
Sexual
accurately reflect,
orientation,
it would accurately reflect the law.
disability
Fine.
standards,
I'm for that.
sexual identity, gender
Yes.
identity, all that. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Delegate Rosenberg.
Okay, Senator Hester, then Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Delegate Rosenberg. This is a fascinating topic. The Joint Committee on Cyber IT and Biotech had a hearing on misinformation in elections this summer. And we had one academic and one company who does this for the federal government. They track misinformation. A lot of it's coming from foreign adversaries. So my question was the definition, you stated is on page 2. Does it matter where the disinformation comes from? Whether it's, a foreign adversary, a random tweet on social media, a citizen in the state of Maryland, or a resident in the state of Maryland? Does it matter where it comes from?
Just has to get onto the portal.
Okay.
So
And-
it does not matter. It would not matter.
And then my second question is, I mean, it says that there might be $50,000 to set up the portal. Have you talked to the State Board of Elections? Is that what they say it will cost?
You should ask
Mr.
Mr.
Demarais.
Demarais, whatever the proper procedure is.
Okay.
You should speak to him.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Okay, Senator Brooks.
Thanks, Chair. Delegate Rosenberg, thanks for the bill.
Pleasure.
Quick question. In the original bill, I saw there was the penalty component. It was a misdemeanor and it was graduated. And on this one, I was looking for the penalty component here. I did find it, page 7, lines 13, 12 to 14, it's $5,000. In the event a person violates it more than once, will each violation would be that $5,000 max and 5
I
years?
assume so.
Oh.
And this is existing law, so we didn't touch that as we should have, the part that it was just pointed out. So it would be however that's been implemented heretofore or up until now. We don't change that.
Okay, all right, thanks, Chair.
Any additional questions for sponsor? Okay, seeing none, we do have a few unfavorable signed up. Is Mr. James Randisi here? Mr. Randisi in person? Okay, do we have any virtual witnesses in the queue? Okay, we have 2 virtual witnesses on favor, Mary Nelson and Catherine Adelaide. Those are 2 witnesses. Those are the final 2 witnesses. See if we can get, are they both in the queue? Okay. Ms. Nelson, I think you need to start your video. Anything? Okay, Ms. Nelson, we have you here, but we don't see you and we can't hear you. So what about Catherine Adelaide? Is she in the queue? Okay, guys, okay, both Mary Nelson and Catherine Adelaide, if we don't get you on the call here in the queue, I'm gonna do a clock here of 10 seconds. We're gonna have to call it. We're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, okay. Mary, okay, Miss Nelson, you made the deadline by 3 seconds. Now you need to unmute yourself and hopefully put your camera on, and then you've got 2 minutes. Miss Nelson, can you unmute her? Okay, Ms. Nelson, we're having some technical problems. Unfortunately, that we're not sure what the problem is. Can you unmute yourself and then we could at least hear you? We don't need you to see you. We could use. Can you unmute yourself down at the bottom of the screen? Okay.
Sometimes it also works with the space bar when you push the space bar. Yeah.
What about our other witnesses? No, okay. Okay. Can you unmute yourself? Okay.
Oh, here, I think I got it.
Okay, Ms.
Oh,
Nelson.
I'm so sorry.
Finally, that's okay. But you have signed up unfavorable and you have 2 minutes, and I think you're going to be the final witness on the bill. So, okay?
Okay,
Proceed.
yeah, thank you. I've been on it since 1 o'clock and I don't know what happened all of a sudden. So I'm Mary Nelson. Oh, let me turn the, oh, there we go. Okay. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name's Mary Nelson, and I'm asking you to please say no to HB 333, election disinformation and improper influence related to voting. HB 33 has the potential to infringe on the First Amendment rights of citizens to raise questions regarding election processes or outcomes. The bill defines election disinformation as incorrect or misleading information about election procedures, election results, or voting rights in the state. That definition could squash a citizen's right to raise questions about election processes and outcomes, and could subject voters to threats and intimidation if they voice their concerns. What one person considers misleading may not be misleading to another. There can be legitimate differences of opinion. Shutting off people's right to voice their opinion is a serious threat to our First Amendment rights of freedom of speech. A person who objects to non-citizens voting could be labeled as opposing voting rights. A person who questions the vote count or whether a provisional ballot is counted could be said to be spreading disinformation about an election result. As has been recently acknowledged by the short-lived Department of Homeland Security Disinformation Board of the U.S. government, free speech cannot be defined and put into buckets to be judged. Let's end the divisiveness. Please cast an unfavorable vote for HB 333, and thank you for waiting for me.
Okay, Senator Brooks, is your light's on? No, okay, any questions for Ms. Nelson? Vice Chair Kagan?
No, never mind.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Nelson, for weighing in here. And with that, that concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 333, and that concludes our bill hearings for today. Let me just real quick ask,